This week on Cinematic Sound Radio. We conclude our celebration of the best scores of 2017 with Part 2, featuring scores 10 to number 1. You'll hear music from such composers as Alexandre Desplat, Yoko Kanno, John Williams, Theodore Shapiro, Jonny Greenwood, and more. My name is Eric Woods. Thank you very much for joining me. Sit back, kick up your feet, and relax as Cinematic Sound Radio begins now.
Streaming on the web since 1996, this is Cinematic Sound.
From Kitchener, Ontario, Canada, you're listening to Cinematic Sound Radio, the show dedicated to the music of film, television, and video games. I'm Eric Woods. Hello to all of our listeners at WROCK Radio, cinematicsound.net, and through Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Pocket Casts, TuneIn, Google Play, or wherever great podcasts are found. It's great to have you on board. If you're listening to this program through Apple Podcasts, please take the time to rate and review the show. It really helps get the show noticed. Also, we'd just like to know what you think of the show. Whether you love it, give it a 5-star rating. If you hate it, give it a 1-star rating. But just let us know what you think of the program. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. Just please leave a rating and a review. And if you do so, please email me at cinematicsound@yahoo.com. Let me know where you're from so I can see the review. It would be greatly appreciated. So we're back after, I think it's a 4-week hiatus. I haven't been around for a while, but I want to thank Tim Burton and Jason Drury for picking up the slack for me. I've been really sick. The flu just basically ripped through my entire family. I haven't been feeling well for the past 4 weeks, and only now am I feeling close to 100%. So I haven't been able to produce any programming. So I promised this show, part 2 of the Best of 2017 show, I think it was about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And I apologize for the long delay, but we are back, and hopefully we're back in the swing of things. So we're going to open up the program today with score number 10, and it's Albion, the Enchanted Stallion, with original score composed by George Kallis. In this film, a 12-year-old girl is transported by a magical black stallion to the mystical world of Albion, where she discovers that she alone is the key to saving an entire race of people. The epic fantasy score composed by George Kallis features a traditional symphonic orchestra, choir, and an assortment of exotic instruments, which transports the listener to the magical kingdom of Albion. And like all great film scores of the Golden Age, the score has the power to tell the story without the visuals. Kallis's goal was to create a magical sonic world by use of swelling orchestral themes for our leads, sinister motifs for the villains, and choral arrangements and world instrumentation to capture the Albion terrain. The main theme gets a great workout in the score. It's a strong adventure melody that essentially carries the score. If you've heard scores like Jerry Goldsmith's Legend or Serge Franklin's brilliant choral score to L'Enfant des Loups, then you'll know what to expect when you hear this score. This is only one of 3 incredibly strong scores written in 2017 by Kallis. We played The Last Warrior on a show last year, and his score to The Black Prince is equally impressive. And if you get a chance to sample 93 Days, which he wrote a few years ago, I highly recommend that score as well. Meanwhile, here is our number 10 score of the year. This is Albion, the Enchanted Stallion, with original score composed by George Kallis. Music from the original motion picture soundtrack to Albion the Enchanted Stallion, with original score composed by George Kallis, and the original soundtrack recording is available on Movie Score Media, and that is our number 10 score of 2017.
You're listening to Cinematic Sound with your host, Eric Woods.
Welcome back to the program. On today's show, the best scores, or my favorite scores, of 2017. In at number 9 is Onna Joshu Neotoro. Okay, so first of all, let's quickly explain to those who don't know what this is or what an NHK Taiga is. Now, NHK is Japan's largest broadcasting company, and every year since the 1960s, they've presented a Taiga drama, which is a year-long historical television dramatic series. And Onna Joshu Neotora, or Neotora the Lady Warlord in English, is the 56th production. The story is about Neotora, who in the 16th century ruled during the Sengoku period. The score for this series was composed by an incredible talent, Yoko Kanno, who is arguably one of the most popular composers working in Japan today. Typically, she writes like an old-school Hollywood composer, expansive themes, sweeping drama, dynamic action music, all written for large-scale symphonic orchestra. I don't own a lot of her music, but I was pointed to a rather large thread at Film Score Monthly in their forum this past year, where I discovered more gems. She clearly has a deep understanding of not only classical symphonic works, but has a genuine talent at writing the type of music that many of us older film score followers fell in love with when we started discovering film music for the first time, and that's mostly symphonic film scores. The score to Onna Joshu Neotora is simply sublime, and I've only heard a quarter of it. The album that I have is one of 4 volumes of music from this series. I'm looking forward to diving into those other albums when I get a chance, but for now, I'll treat you with some of the most dazzling music you will hear written in 2017, and it all comes off of just this first volume of albums. It features beautiful themes, intense action music, gorgeous musical colors, whether it's Western or Eastern styled. The music takes you on a journey, and I hope you enjoy the few selections that I have for you right now. Here is our number 9 score of 2017. It comes from the television drama Onna Joshu Neotora, with a spectacular original score composed by Yoko Kanno. Music from our number 9 score of 2017, Onna Joshu Neotora, with the original score composed by Yoko Kanno.
You're listening to the film, television, and video game music radio show, Cinematic Sound.
Welcome back to the show. Thank you very much for tuning in. I'm Eric Woods. In at number 8 is Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets, with original score composed by Alexandre Desplat. This film is a science fiction adventure film written and directed by Luc Besson, best known for his work as the director of Lyon and The Fifth Element. The film is based on the French science fiction comic series and stars Dane DeHaan as Valerian and Cara Delevingne as Laureline, with Clive Owen, Rihanna, Ethan Hawke, Herbie Hancock, Chris Wu, and Rutger Hauer all playing supporting roles. It's a visually stunning film that unfortunately got panned by critics and bombed at the box office. I actually really enjoyed it. And one of the biggest surprises was when Besson's frequent collaborator, Eric Serra, wasn't announced as the score composer. This time, Besson tapped another French composer, Alexandre Desplat, who had some time on his hand when his role as composer for Star Wars Rogue One was no longer needed. So for those disappointed with Desplat's removal from Star Wars, at least they were still going to get a large-scale science fiction score in this film. And for this film, Desplat wrote 4 separate themes, and all 4 themes dance around this score so fluidly. The score is full of life, drama, and excitement. It's wonderfully orchestrated, as are all Desplat scores. The opening cue in particular for this film is just splendid storytelling. The film opens up with the telling of the history of the indigenous people on the planet Mole. And the people are a low-tech humanoid race who live in peace. They fish for these pearls and use small animals to replicate them. It's a harmonious society, and Desplat's music perfectly captures this carefree world. Desplat, who absolutely loves woodwinds, again lets them shine in this opening track. And then let's address Desplat's action music. In this score, I don't think it has ever been better. Each thundering piece is expertly composed, featuring dazzling colors performed at breakneck speeds. While The Shape of Water won Desplat the Oscar, Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets, however, was his best score, and his Cinematic Sound Radio's number 8 score of 2017. Music from Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets with original score composed by Alexandre Desplat, and the original soundtrack recording is available on WROCK, and that score is our number 8 score of 2017.
The home for film, television, and video game music since 1996. This is Cinematic Sound.
Welcome back to the show. So what's in at number 7? Well, we have one more video game score on this countdown. And we've already featured so many great game scores in part 1. However, this score is the only one that cracked the top 10 and was one of the last video game scores I got to experience before finalizing this list. Our number 7 score of 2017 is Valkyria Revolution, with original score composed by Yasunori Mitsuda. Now, I love video game music. I feel that we get more creative music and more free-flowing music from the medium. I feel that they make for a much more interesting listen on their own, at least in my mind. While there are still restrictions in the game world, I find that some scores are just allowed to play through a particular scene or level or whatnot, and can be composed as actual music and not necessarily abide to some of the rules of, let's say, film or TV, where particular sync points need to be hit. Again, not saying that that doesn't happen in game scores, because it's an entirely different process, but as I experienced this game, I felt that the music played a great role in creating a certain mood, or really hammering home the excitement or sheer size of the level that you were playing. Pieces of music at times essentially played straight through a level in almost montage fashion, rather than sticking closely with the drama unfolding while you play. I mean, the only way I could describe this is if you were playing a fighting game and a composer just wrote an exciting action cue that played start to finish throughout the fight and then essentially repeated until the fight was over. I hope that makes some sort of sense. Anyway, check out some of the gameplay from this game if you can. And the game is actually a riot. First of all, it's a vibrant game. It just looks absolutely gorgeous. However, the weapons you carry around are kind of oversized, and I mean ridiculously oversized. There are some swords you swing in this game that are taller than your character and even thicker than your body. It's just over-exaggerated to the extreme, but it's still a lot of fun, especially when you see them swinging these giant swords all over the place. The game is basically a sword and sorcery game, but with guns and lasers as well, with a classic symphonic action score to go along with it. Just think of Krull or Conan the Barbarian or the Monkey King or even He-Man. Now, the score was written by Yasunori Mitsuda, which is his first solo game score in 7 years. This is the stuff you wish could make a return to Hollywood fantasy films. Big themes, great symphonic writing, with a true emotional core. This is such great stuff, and it's my favorite game score of 2017, and enters in at number 7 on Cinematic Sound Radio's Favorite Scores of 2017. This is Valkyria Revolution. music from the video game Valkyria Revolution, with original score composed by Yasunori Mitsuda. And the original soundtrack recording is available on Sleigh Bells Music. And that's our number 7 score of 2017 and my favorite video game score of the year.
On the air and streaming on the web since 1996, this is Cinematic Sound.
Welcome back to the program. This is Cinematic Sound Radio, and today we are listening to the Best Film, Television, and Video Game Scores of 2017. This is part 2 of a 2-part series. We produced part 1 about a month ago, so if you haven't checked out that show yet, I highly recommend doing so before listening to this show. So in at number 6, music from Star Wars, The Last Jedi, with original score composed by John Williams. Now, The Last Jedi is, of course, the 8th film in the Star Wars saga and is a direct sequel to 2015's The Force Awakens. This time, Rian Johnson is in the director's chair. What he ended up producing was one of the most divisive Star Wars films of all time. Some felt that this was the best film since The Empire Strikes Back, and some even had the guts to say that this film was the best Star Wars film of all time, while others said the polar opposite, saying that it was just as bad as the prequels, and even saying that it was the worst Star Wars film of all time. Okay, with all of that hyperbole out of the way, here's what I thought. I thought the film was a mess. I felt that the script needed a few more drafts or at least a second writer, and the Finn and Rose portions could have been completely tossed or rewritten. Actually, Rose was a pretty terrible character and did some absolutely absurd and stupid things in this film, which had my eyes rolling. The new character of General Holdo was also poorly written. Poe's mutiny was an utter waste of time. The long volley of laser blasts that kept the Resistance at bay is probably one of the most boring sequences in any Star Wars film. The only thing that worked for me, and again, having seen this a second time recently, is the Rey, Kylo, and Luke storyline. That was utterly fantastic, taking each character down new paths. The rest of the characters, I thought, were wasted in what eventually became the longest-running Star Wars film of all time. And in my opinion, it's one of the most disappointing Star Wars films since Attack of the Clones in 2002. And I really have no interest in seeing this movie again. I saw it twice. It was pretty painful to get through because every time the story switched from Rey, Kylo, and Luke to anything else, I just wanted to skip all that and move back to the stuff that was actually really interesting. Having said that, we have a great John Williams score. And he wrote 180 minutes of music for this film, which was essentially scored wall to wall. And he brought with him a plethora of previously existing themes that he utilized quite a bit in the score. Luke's theme, Leia's theme, Rebel Fanfare, Yoda's theme, the Imperial March, the Force theme, which I think was played more than any other theme in this film. Rey's theme, Kylo's theme, the Resistance theme, the Jedi Steps theme, Poe's theme. There's tons of old themes in this score. And on top of that, we get new character themes, especially for Rose. She gets a brand new theme, which is pretty good on its own, but gets increasingly more grating as the film moves along. It's really not a pliable theme. There's a new Last Jedi theme, which is highlighted as Luke travels across the tiny island of Ahch-To, with Rey only steps behind. There's a theme for General Holdo. It's only featured once on the original soundtrack recording, but the For Your Consideration promo lets us hear her theme in full glory as she uses her ship's light-speed engines as a weapon. That cue does reprise itself in the end credits, but you get to hear it on its own on the promo, and we're going to play that track for you right off the top. There's some frenetic action material, deep dramatic writing, especially the last few cues on the album. However, there are some disappointments for me. For instance, some of the copy and pasted orchestrations for a few of the themes presented in the score, especially Yoda's theme and in Leia's theme, they're essentially the concert versions of those themes, and the end credits. One of Williams' strengths is creating coherent end credit cues. Well, unfortunately, the finale cue on this album is a bit of an unfocused mess, and I basically skipped that track anytime I listen to the album, which is rare for me for a Star Wars movie, and I really haven't been this disappointed in a Star Wars end credit cue since Revenge of the Sith. However, the score is still, it's a lot of fun, and you can find some juicy previously unreleased gems on the For Your Consideration album if you can find it. Here now, our number 6 score of 2017. This is Star Wars The Last Jedi, with original music composed by John Williams. Music from the original motion picture soundtrack to Star Wars The Last Jedi, with original score composed by John Williams, and the original soundtrack recording is available on Walt Disney Records, and that's our number 6 score of 2017.
On the air and streaming on the web since 1996, this is Cinematic Sound.
Welcome back to the program. Okay, we are in top 5 territory right now, and in at number 5, music from War for the Planet of the Apes with original score composed by Michael Giacchino. This film was directed by Matt Reeves, starred Andy Serkis, Woody Harrelson, and Steve Zahn. This is the sequel to the first 2 films in the rebooted franchise. This film takes place 2 years after the events of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, where Caesar and his apes have been at war against the humans. As the apes start suffering heavy losses, Caesar wrestles with his darker instincts in order to face the Colonel and the traitorous gorilla Red. This film is absolutely incredible. One of my favorite movies of the year, featuring some of the most impressive special effects and motion capture technology that I have ever seen in a movie. While Blade Runner 2049 won the Oscar for Best Special Effects, that film looks amazing as well. I really thought that War of the Planet of the Apes should have won the Oscar, and Andy Serkis should have at least been nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actor, or at least the special effects team, along with Andy Serkis, should get a special Academy Award one of these days for their innovation in motion capture technology. They are absolutely the best in the business at doing that, in my opinion. The original score for the film was composed by Michael Giacchino, who had another busy year. Besides attending his 50th birthday concert in England in October of last year, Giacchino worked on 4 scores: The Book of Henry, Spider-Man Homecoming, Coco, and this, his best work of the year and one of the best scores of his career. And this year, he's working on The Incredibles 2 and Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. In War of the Planet of the Apes, Giacchino expands on the brooding musical palette of his previous score, which I really wasn't a big fan of. However, it did have its moments, which included a sensational end credit cue. The thematic material from the second film returns, along with some new motifs and melodies. There is some impressive avant-garde writing going on in this score, especially during the expertly written opening cue that lasts 11 minutes. And there's some truly horrifying sounds in that cue that I haven't heard from Giacchino ever. There's also an interesting Ennio Morricone-esque spaghetti western vibe to the score. There's a cue in the score, and we'll feature for you in the end credit cue that we're going to play for you right now, that seems to be written out of Ennio Morricone's The Muglia Più Bella. It's the guitar strumming and the chanting vocals that easily signifies Morricone as an influence. And then the theme gets reprised in a fabulous thematically led action cue as well. And then there's a new descending motif, which has a callback to Anakin's dark deeds in John Williams' Revenge of the Sith, and it's very, very powerful stuff. Giacchino had a banner year in 2017, and this score, War for the Planet of the Apes, was his best. This is our number 5 score of 2017. Music from War for the Planet of the Apes, with original score composed by Michael Giacchino. And the original soundtrack recording is available on Sony Classical. That's our number 5 score of 2017.
You're listening to Cinematic Sound with your host, Eric Woods.
Welcome back to the show. In at number 4 is music from The Post with original score composed by John Williams. John Williams has never been in a newsroom, but could imagine it being a very noisy environment back in the days of the typewriter. Williams didn't think that his music would fit in the newsroom scenes due to what could have been a battle of music and sound effects, but in actuality, some of the key moments of Williams's sparse but impressive score are heard in the newsroom. The Post is a historical political thriller directed and produced by Steven Spielberg. It stars Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks, along with wonderful supporting performances by Bob Odenkirk, Bruce Greenwood, and Tracy Letts. The film depicts the true story of attempts by journalists at the Washington Post to publish the Pentagon Papers, classified documents regarding the 30-year involvement of the United States government in the Vietnam War. Williams is not one to shy away from emotion in his music, and one of the key moments for Williams, a scene that he likes quite a bit, was the final decision by the Supreme Court to allow the publication of the Pentagon Papers. There is a moment of great exultation, and Williams lets the emotion pour out across the orchestra. There's also hints of electronics in the score, something that Williams rarely uses in his music, and is something that he'll even admit that he is not entirely great at utilizing, but there were a few key moments in the film that called for that color. And so Williams did a bit of research with people who are far more familiar with electronic music than Williams is, and was able to insert some electronic textures for some fresh musical color in the score. The score is short, but that doesn't mean it's not impactful, because this is one of the best spotted Spielberg films ever. Much of the film plays without music, but when Williams' music is needed, it ramps up the drama and really makes you pay attention. For instance, just before the decision is made to start the presses, Williams ramps up the tension utilizing old-school 70s-style thriller scoring. The music during these moments is very spy thriller-like, almost tiptoeing or cat-and-mouse-like music, but not in a Mickey Mousing way. And while Meryl Streep's character, Kay Graham, says, "Let's publish," editors and typesetters get ready to publish this landmark paper with only hours to go before the presses are started. Graham continues to question her choices throughout these moments, and Williams' music heightens the tension and her confusion and added insecurity. However, Graham stands firm with her choice, and then Tom Hanks, playing Ben Bradley, says, "Run it," and Williams, along with some fabulous imagery of an old press doing its thing, takes over. It's a stunning montage with stunning music. Williams again proving in this sequence why he is the king at musical storytelling in film. Now, the music that I just described and the other music described earlier is reprised in a magnificent end credit cue, which we're going to play for you today. While Star Wars The Last Jedi will remain the most popular John Williams effort of 2017, Spielberg, as always, brought out the best in John Williams. This is a number 4 score of 2017, The Post. Music from our number 4 score of 2017, The Post, with original music composed by John Williams, and the original soundtrack recording is available on Sony Classical.
The home for film, television, and video game music since 1996. This is Cinematic Sound.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Eric Woods. In at number 3 of our best scores, or favorite scores of 2017, is The Death of Stalin, with original score composed by Christopher Willis. So, Christopher Willis. Never heard of him? Well, if you watch Veep, then you know who he is, but for the rest of us, he's a relative newcomer and blew us all the way with his score to this political satire comedy. Now, the film is actually based on a graphic novel and depicts the Soviet power struggle following the death of dictator Joseph Stalin in 1953. The film was released in UK theaters in 2017 and makes its North American premiere in March. Okay, so first, who is Christopher Willis? Well, he's a British composer who in 2013 did work on some Disney Mickey Mouse shorts and co-composed the HBO comedy series Veep along with Rupert Gregson Williams. He has also written additional music for Carter Burwell, Harry Gregson Williams, and Henry Jackman on such films as The Twilight Saga, Breaking Dawn Part 2, Winnie the Pooh, X-Men First Class, just to name a few. The Death of Stalin was his big break. The score won him the IFMC Award for Best Comedy Score, and he was nominated for Breakthrough Composer of the Year. The score for Stalin is stupendous. Like the best comedy composers of the past, Willis played this score as straight as an arrow. It was early on when director Armando Iannucci imagined resurrecting the great Soviet composers of the 20th century. So with that, Willis studied the music of Shostakovich, Prokofiev, as well as Weinberg, who was a young collaborator of Shostakovich. The plan was to write music in that grand, serious, traditional style, but to completely juxtapose it with the comedy playing on screen. They felt that playing something so obviously over the top and drop-dead serious over these comedic moments would help get more laughs in the film. Think of John Morris's music for Young Frankenstein or Spaceballs, or Elmer Bernstein's music to Animal House. All of those scores played dead serious and get the laughs when you listen to them in context. As for this score, Willis took it to the extreme. He poured more emotion than needed in, amped up the volume, increased the speed. He took what was already established in 1950s Russia and put it on steroids. Enormous does not begin to properly describe this score, but it's glorious. And now, one of the greatest film music debuts, I think, of all time. This is Christopher Willis's The Death of Stalin. It's my number 3 favorite score of 2017. The outstanding music from The Death of Stalin with original score composed by Christopher Willis, and that's my number 3 score of 2017.
You're listening to Cinematic Sound with your host, Eric Woods.
Welcome back to the program. In at number 2, music from Phantom Thread with original score composed by Jonny Greenwood. This film is a period piece and was written and directed by the incredibly talented Paul Thomas Anderson, who has given us such modern-day classics as Boogie Nights, Magnolia, and There Will Be Blood. The film is set in 1950s London, where a renowned dressmaker, whose life is disrupted by a young, strong-willed woman, Alma, and becomes his muse and lover. The film stars Daniel Day-Lewis in an Academy Award-nominated performance, which will be his last film ever. At least that's what he says. The score was written by Anderson's frequent collaborator, Jonny Greenwood, who started working with Anderson on There Would Be Blood and continued with The Master, Inherent Vice, and the documentary Jununin. The score by Greenwood, who is of course the lead guitarist and keyboardist for Radiohead, is sublime. The score is a mixed bag of various influences from Bach to Steve Reich to Debussy to Bernard Herrmann. Even though the opening cue of the film was supposed to evoke some eerie sounds of Bach, what it turned out to be to me was a homage to the great Bernard Herrmann. Again, I'm not that well versed in the music of Bach, so there might be a piece that sounds just like this in his repertoire, but I immediately thought of Herrmann, especially those tortured strings halfway through the cue. The score is almost bipolar. It has this harshness, but then there are cues that explode with great clarity and beauty, especially cues that invoke the timeless sound of Debussy's Clair de Lune. It's so elegant, so emotional, so classy. It's beautiful stuff. This was the score that I hoped to win the Academy Award. Alas, Desplat won for The Shape of Water, but Greenwood should be proud of this work. He was finally acknowledged by the Academy, and he won the IFMC Award for Best Film Score of the Year back in February. This is my number 2 favorite score of 2017, the fabulous Phantom Thread, with original score composed by Jonny Greenwood. Music from The Phantom Thread, with original score composed by Jonny Greenwood. The original soundtrack recording is available on Nonsuch Records and is my number 2 favorite score of 2017. Well, we've sadly come to the end of yet another edition of Cinematic Sound Radio. Thanks to everyone at WROCK Radio for helping me get this show on the WROCK Radio airwaves. Check them out at WROCKradio.com. Feel free to reach out to Cinematic Sound Radio by emailing me at cinematicsound@yahoo.com. Don't forget to visit cinematicsound.net to hear an archived version of this show and years of previous programming as well. We're also on Apple Podcasts. I also want to thank Tim Burton for lending his voice for all the bumpers and stingers you hear throughout the program, and of course, composer David Coscina for writing Cinematic Sound Radio's intro music. So what's the number 1 score of 2017? Well, it is Captain Underpants, the first epic movie, with original score composed by Theodore Shapiro. This is an animated film based on the series of children's novels by David Pelkey. The film was directed by David Soren, who directed Turbo in 2013. Soren's actually a fellow Canadian. He grew up in my hometown of Hamilton, Ontario. The voice cast includes Kevin Hart, Ed Helms, and Tom Middleditch. The film follows 2 imaginative elementary school prankster students who hypnotize their mean-spirited principal, Mr. Krupp, into thinking that he's Captain Underpants, a hero in comic books that George and Harold write together. This film is an absolute blast. And the mammoth score was written by Theodore Shapiro. It's enormous. It's fully symphonic in the tradition of the great superhero scores of the past, most prominently Superman the Movie by John Williams and Supergirl by Jerry Goldsmith, with a bit of Carl Starling and Mighty Mouse thrown in for good measure. The main theme is a wonderful homage to the genre, a type of score that doesn't come along too often. This is a type of score that doesn't come along too often. But as I've said in the past, animation is probably the only medium that still supports music of this sort, and the other is horror scoring. One of the more hilarious moments in the film and score, and only a film of this sort could get away with something like this, is the main bad guy, Professor Poopy Pants. And he actually has his name sung by a full choir to the tune of Handel's Hallelujah Chorus from The Messiah. We're not going to play that track for you in our suite, but this is what it actually sounds like. So we're just going to play that one portion for you right now. Isn't that absolutely ridiculous? And of course, Shapiro got the choir to sing out our hero's name as well. And you can hear them in various cues singing Underpants. He's Captain Underpants. It's just an absolute riot. It puts a smile on my face every time I hear it. And this score, more than any other score in 2017, the score that I had the most fun with, was the one that kept popping into my mind when I was asked which score I would recommend throughout the year. It contained the one melody that I kept singing throughout the year, and was the score that I returned to the most. The score is everything you can ask for in film music these days. It's creative, fresh, memorable music that plays such an important role in the film's narrative. Whether it's a dead serious Oscar bait film or just a silly, fun, animated film for the whole family. By the way, if you haven't seen the movie, check it out. It's more than just a silly, typical family adventure film. It's smart, it has heart, and it's just so darn entertaining. Here's my favorite score of 2017, Captain Underpants, the first epic movie, with original score composed by Theodore Shapiro, and the original soundtrack recording is available on Backlot Music. Well, thank you very much for joining me this week. I really hope you enjoyed today's program, and until next time, take care and happy listening. thank you for listening to Cinematic Sound Radio. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please email us at cinematicsound@yahoo.com. Don't forget to check us out at Cinematic Sound Radio at cinematicsound.net on the web, CinSound Radio on Twitter, and Cinematic Sound on Facebook. And if you listen to us on iTunes, why don't you take a moment right now and rate the show and write a brief review. All reviews help us get noticed on iTunes. And don't forget to tell all your friends about the program as well. Share the show on your favorite social media network. We really appreciate all the support. And don't forget to check out our affiliate at WROCK Radio at WROCKRadio.com.